All right. Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I realize people are still logging in and maybe running late. It's right around the lunch hour here in Los Angeles. But because we have limited time and I want to be respectful of everybody else's time, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Lori Barr. I am the co-founder of Raise the Bar. We provide resources and support to single parent students who are pursuing a post-secondary degree. Our goal is to create opportunity and economic mobility to student parents and their children through education. And we're happy to be offering this webinar series on the transfer process. Today will be our first, and we have a series of 5. So we're happy to bring this to you. I'm here in Los Angeles because we provide services here in Southern California, as well as in the Twin Cities in the state of Minnesota. So for those of us joining on their lunch hour, thank you for doing so. And for those of us who are in Minnesota who are making time in the middle of their afternoon, thank you for joining us. Just a couple housekeeping tips. Number one, we will be monitoring the chat and the questions that are being submitted. We will spend about 10-12 minutes at the end answering those questions. So if you have questions, you want to submit those. Stephanie Sandler will be monitoring those, and then Susan will answer at the end. Also, the PowerPoint will be available on our website post event, and so you can access it there. For anybody who's watching the recording of this, you've accessed this already on our website, and so thank you for doing so. But if you have questions or you want to go back and look at the slides, you can do that on our website. And then finally, you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow, just thanking you for joining us. And then you'll also be given another opportunity to submit any questions that you have. So there's multiple ways for you to engage with us, for us to support your efforts and your journey. And so with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to our host for today, Miss Susan Warfield.
Hello, everyone. As Lori said, I'm Susan Warfield. I'm here in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And the topic I'll be covering today is finding your passion, paying your bills, and loving your life. Okay, I'm having a technical issue that we just checked here a minute ago. Okay. I cannot, Lori, can you see if by some chance you might have control of the screen and just hit enter?
Nope, nope, I cannot.
Okay, let me just go on 1 second.
I do see that I can share the screen, but I can't access your PowerPoint.
Okay, I can correct for this. 1 second. I apologize. We tested this before we ever went online and it worked perfectly, but let me just. Okay, for whatever reason, it works now. Okay, sorry about that. I think that for whatever reason, there's a delay on the action, so I will try to just maybe switch a little bit quicker. My name is Susan Warfield. I am the program director of the Student Parent Help Center. I have been working in higher ed for 22 years, specifically with student parents. I've had 30 years in career development, former therapist where I did a mix of practice, but a large portion of the reason people were seeing me were either college students for career information or midlife people wanting to make a change of career. And I also taught career planning at the U for several years. Okay. Sometimes the word passion can be a scary thing when it comes to career. I know I've heard people say or read in articles that Sometimes it's frightening enough to just pick a career and know you're making a big choice like that without throwing on top of students that they have to find a passion. So if that word is intimidating to you, please think of a word in your mind that matches your definition of a fulfilling career, which reflects your most true, authentic self. It could be purpose, it could be meaning, authenticity, happiness, whatever you're thinking right now. When I think about how to teach people to find the career fit for them, or I'm working with students, there are many, many things, components that go into that. To have the best fit for your particular life and yourself, your needs, you need to think about the main portions of your life that matter most to most people. One is what we've just talked about, the passion, the purpose, your authentic self, what feeds your soul and what fits you personally. No one wants to wind up in a job that maybe makes them a lot of money, but that they hate going to. The other thing is the demand and long range viability of a major. We'll talk quite a bit about this today, but we're in a very rapidly changing career environment right now. Technology has brought on careers that didn't even exist 10 years ago. And all the time we're changing in our projections of what the jobs of the future are going to be. And there are some careers, honestly, that are dying out because there just isn't a need for them anymore. So everybody should take into a little consideration what the long-term projection as much as possible for a career that you're choosing, and to pay attention to the ones that may not be needed in the near future anymore. You want to think about your own skill set, best grades, and academics. And this is often sometimes where students don't put enough energy. A lot of times people may tell you, oh, you know, there's nursing is a wonderful career and there's all these jobs in nursing, but you may not think about how much science it's going to take, how many science classes you're going to need to take to be able to get a nursing degree. And if you're not a science person, that may make it a very difficult avenue for you to be successful in. Salary and security needs, of course, we all have to be realistic in that area. The best career in the world isn't a great career if you can't pay your bills and keep a home for your children. And then income to student debt ratio. This is more and more critical with the increasing debt load that's on students, is you need to think about the long range impact of all the student loans that you're taking out. I know student loans are something that particularly recent generations think a lot about. And I think it's unrealistic to think that you can get a degree completely without any loan debt. But you need to think about what the cost of that specific degree is. If you can only get a job in that field with a PhD, then that loan debt ratio is going to be far greater because you're going to have to go to school for many more years. Okay. In the previous diagram, each of the bubbles that I just reviewed can be adjusted for each individual person. You may have greater security needs, and so your income bubble might be far greater than somebody else's passion and purpose bubble. However, if all those bubbles don't meet in the center so that they are all incorporated in your career choice, there's going to be imbalances and problems that could arise on down the line. You wind up in a job you love that doesn't make you enough money, etc. If your security and income bubble takes up so much space it crowds out passion and purpose, you may wind up in a job that pays well, but you hate going to each day. That's what we call the secure but bored or unhappy. If your passion bubble is so large it crowds out your income to student debt ratio and your income bubble, you can wind up economically insecure at a job you enjoy, but eventually have to leave in order to pay the bills. And I'm serious about this. This may sound silly, but I would suggest and recommend that you try actually doing this as an activity. You're all parents. I'm sure you have construction paper around the house. Try cutting out some different size circles and writing these areas on the circles according to the size that you think they mean are critical in your life. And this is a good activity to do with your kids, not that they will create a career diagram, but you could easily have your kids sitting next to you doing art projects while you work on this. Each one of you may have individual needs that are in addition to the diagram we just saw. Some of you may have child and family needs that have to be taken into consideration. For instance, not wanting to move out of state to go on to with your academic degree path because your kids are old enough that they're in school and you don't want to relocate them. There are some cultural considerations for people. Sometimes the decision of what somebody majors in or what they're going to become may be a decision that the entire extended family or the community makes on some level, and you have to take that into consideration. Extended family responsibility or input. You may be still somewhat dependent on your parents to pay your college, or you have elders that you need to care for, and that impacts your income needs. Medical costs are another one, is something else that comes up quite a bit with students. Is maybe you have a child that has medical issues, and that affects the income you need to make because you're going to be paying long-term medical care. There are several scenarios when you're making a decision like this where things can come out of balance if you don't carefully think them through. What if paying the bills or debt tolerance bumps passion? If you feel the pressure that the economic considerations have to be first and foremost. You need to also think about 1/3 of your life is spent at work, so loving what you do is key to a fulfilling life. So you still don't want to wind up in something you hate just because it pays well. There may be other things that pay just as well. Our lives are larger than our careers. Look at the whole picture of your life and how you can get your needs met in other areas. And can your passion become a hobby or even a side gig if it will not meet your security needs? Here's an example of that whole worldview. What are your hobbies and pastimes? What's your passion, purpose? What feeds your soul? Maybe you're already doing something like that in the community or in your own life. And so you know what that is, and it doesn't have to completely be met in your career. The career is definitely a huge portion of this decision. Economic security, volunteerism, and extracurricular activities are another way that you can get your needs met. And so again, just like with the other bubbles, to have a fulfilling life, all of these things have to be somewhere in the circle, but some certain people's bubbles may be bigger than others. What if grades and abilities don't fit your passion? In my experience working with students, this is the thing that causes the most strife for students, and that I wind up getting involved in counseling them the most often. Is they may have a passion. Sometimes it's actually a major that family members, or there's been a cultural consideration that we want you to be a pharmacist and only a pharmacist, or you have to go into the medical field because we like that prestige and we want you to be a medical provider. But then they get into that track and they just can't pass the classes that are needed to be successful in that field. One thing to think about, first and foremost, is you will never truly be happy doing something that is a constant struggle. And you don't want to make yourself miserable. If you're struggling to get through the classes, you hate them, you're not getting passing grades, that's a reflection of what it's going to be like to be in that career when you get out the door with your degree. You will find something that closely meets your initial passion if you let go, get help, and explore. And I see this every day on my job. The only time I've seen students not complete a degree and just leave because they aren't being successful is when they don't reach out and get the help they need to redirect themselves into something that fits their needs and their abilities more. Review your transcript. Even the high school transcript can give a lot of information. Ask for help and find something you are good at that meets the same life purpose or passion. And it's pretty clear to me, this is where I start with students. I open up their transcript and I look and I see where they got their A's and B's and where they're getting their C's and D's and barely passing. You do not want to be majoring in something where you're getting C's and D's. And then call in the experts, call in mentors that have been through college themselves and know the reality of what it's like to be in a difficult major, your advisors, counselors, and if you're lucky enough to have a student parent program, they can all offer you career assistance, even if career services is not written on their door. To have a fulfilling career, you first have to get through the major. And major selection has, just like career selection, a number of components that you need to think about if you want to make the best choice for you. One is life, work experience, and career exposure. Some of you may have already been working in a field that you know you love. Maybe, I know some examples, maybe somebody has worked the front desk at a hotel and they've decided they wanted to get into hotel management. For those of you that are already in college, look at the campus tools, the major lists, the major fairs. If you don't have, as simple as this sounds, if you don't have any idea what you might want to major in, just start with a list of majors. I've helped students find careers that honestly they didn't even know existed. We went through the list of majors. They would point out things and say, that sounds interesting. What is that? And what could I do with it? Having a professional go through that list with you will, of course, reap more benefits because they can sit there and explain it to you. Expert assistance, going to the career services at your college. If you're still in high school, going to your guidance counselor and giving them direct information on what you want help with, that you want them to explain some majors to you. That's not a silly question or a silly thing to ask. Job shadowing, mentoring, informational interviews. I know this is a difficult area for busy student parents. They don't often have time to do these things, but even just a quick 10-minute informational interview with somebody that you met at a coffee shop that you get talking to, and if their career sounds interesting, say, hey, do you mind if we take 10 minutes? Your career sounds really fascinating to me. I'm trying to think about career choices, and can I talk to you for 10 minutes on what you do for a living? Academic best grades, and you can see I've made that green for go and bigger than all the other slots, because the simple truth is, if you don't know where your best grades are and you don't know where your actual skills and abilities are, then it's going to be very difficult to wind up with a good fit. And then your own research. Look at lists of hot fields, look at salaries. The US Department of Labor has a website where you can go in and it tells you what the average salary is for that point in time for just about any career you can think of. And then what we've talked about, the dying majors. There are some majors, like the best example is philosophy. There are very few people hiring philosophers these days, and even departments are closing at colleges. And so even getting a PhD and teaching philosophy is not a good option at this point in most cases. So if you think about all these things and you feel like you've got a place that feels good with all of them, then that is probably your best major fit. And this is just in general throughout your life. Allow for serendipity. Say you're struggling and you don't know, and you're, trying really hard to think about things. Pay attention to where are the classes that you enjoyed. If you're just doing your generals and you haven't had to declare a major yet, you're not sure, think about what's your favorite class and where did you get a good grade, and ask the professor in their office hours if you can talk to them about that major, and what besides being a college professor can somebody do with that major. And really do this. I know students are hesitant to approach their professors. It can be intimidating, but they have office hours. And I can tell you from working in higher ed, they're thrilled when somebody comes in to talk to them about their work. They've spent 8-10 years studying what they teach. They obviously love it, and nothing thrills them more than talking about it. Go through the entire majors list of your college or planned college and see if there are things that you are interested in. Explore news stories or interviews with people who do something you have never thought of. And then even if you know what you want to do and it's the perfect fit, there will be people you meet and jobs you take that will lead you in places you cannot see now. It's a lifelong journey. I grew up first generation college attender. No one in my family had gone to school. I knew I wanted to be a social worker early on. I wanted to work with abused kids. That was my initial goal. It just happened that when I was an undergrad psych major, there was an older woman that came to do recertification credits for her profession in the research lab that I worked in. And she was a school social worker. In my poor rural area, we did not have school social workers in our schools. But she described what she did. And from that moment on, I decided to take the school social work classes when I went to get my MSW. And I was a school social worker for 7 years. Options for busy parents. We all know you're time crunched constantly. So use technology and avoid time wasters. Use LinkedIn. You might not be able to network in person, but you could connect online. And I can't tell you what a good resource LinkedIn is. I know even students that use a lot of social media don't often use LinkedIn. For one thing, it's a great way just to store and kind of make a portfolio of your career materials as you go further on. You now have a basic resume uploaded. And you can search for people in different fields and connect with them and just ask if you can shoot a few emails back and forth about their industry. Avoid time wasters. If you use campus career services, explain that you have limited time and more life experience and you prefer to meet with staff, not a student advisor. Many college campuses use peer advisors, but most of you are not going to get linked with a true peer that has kids and knows about time management and has the life experience that many of you come to college with. So don't be afraid to say that. You're not being snotty or rude or anything. You're paying for those services in your student fees. So you should get what you want if possible. Use technology. You might not have time to drive to an informational interview, but could you squeeze in a 20-minute Zoom interview with somebody that you've met, or maybe a friend has a friend that works in a field that they've agreed to hook you up with that person. And you could, and that's easier on them too, if they don't have to take time to meet you for coffee. You might not be able to do a free internship, but could you take a credit-bearing service learning class? This is a great option. It does take more time, but you're at least earning credit for that class. And it's a big thing that most college campuses are offering service learning options for basic classes that you already need to take for LibEd requirements. And what that gets you is, yes, you do free work a few hours a week for an agency, but it may open the door to agencies that the university or college has connections with that you might not even know about or not be able to make on your own. Okay, not to go in a negative direction, but sometimes things do go wrong. And what do you do then? These are the worst mistakes and biggest roadblocks I've seen to happiness and good career choices. Continue to insist on a major you are not good at and cannot pull A's and B's in. If you hear other people telling you should make a change in major, do it. In most cases, I would say as soon as you can, because I have worked with students where I've suggested that and suggested that and suggested it, and they won't do it until they're on the line of absolutely being suspended because of their grades, when they should have probably changed a year ago. Getting stuck on a passion or choice that does not fit your abilities and winding up with no degree at all or a field where you cannot compete. I use this example a lot, so forgive me, but the easiest one I can think of is med school. There are students that are insistent that they're going to go to med school, and that's been their dream ever since they were a kid, to be a doctor. But then they get in the pre-med track and they find they aren't strong enough in sciences to get the grades that they need to go on to med school. They may even be able to graduate, but in most cases, it takes a really high, almost perfect GPA to get into med school. So if somebody tells you, I don't think you're strong enough to head to med school, you need to start thinking about that and weighing that information and think about a less competitive health career track or another major if the science grades are really bad. Not considering the realistic costs of your plan in terms of money and debt, time, financial aid limits, and cost to family security or relationships. The best example I've had of this is I've had students who are psych majors that have no idea that they can't be a therapist without at least a master's degree. And I've literally seen the look on students' faces when I tell them as a sophomore, when they say, oh, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to work in a mental health clinic when I get my degree. And they're floored when they hear that there's no way to be a therapist until you have 2 years of a mental health master's and then usually supervision and licensure after that. Those are the kind of questions you should ask people when you major in something to begin with. Now, there are other things you can do with just a psych BA. You can work for companies and sales and things like that. But if you want to be a therapist, there's a master's degree involved. And those are the kind of questions to ask people. Think if things are going wrong, think of themes of careers that will meet your needs. Using the doctor and health example, there are many, many helping professions. Usually when somebody wants to go into medicine or working with people on that level, they're very caring and they want to do something to give back to humanity and help their fellow person. Well, there are many helping professions where you don't have to take the very long, rigorous track of science classes that is required to be a doctor, in some cases a nurse. There's social work, psychology, sex and family health educator, children's care specialists. They're people that work actually in a hospital environment, but they're working with more the child's emotional side when they're working in a children's hospital to make sure that they are keeping their spirits up and not so frightened by the medical procedures they may be going through when they're hospitalized. And then public health researcher. These are the people that study things like COVID, that are literally going door to door to find out why people may be against being vaccinated. And then, of course, the doctor, dentist, or nurse. This is drilling down even further on the health track, alternatives to doctor or nursing. There's lab technician, and they can pay very well, and sometimes it's only a 2-year degree. A phlebotomist, this is the person that does all your blood testing when they take all that blood from you at the doctor's office and it goes down. You have to go down and get your blood draw. The people that work in that clinic and look at your blood and do all the testing are phlebotomists. Nutritionists, they're the people that tell us how to eat, make sure they can work in nursing homes, childcare centers, sometimes consult with nutritionists. They work in hospitals, but they're not administering medication. They're just consulting with you on how diet might impact your health needs. Orthotist and prosthetist. I'd never heard of the orthotist. These are not the people that design prosthetic devices. That would be, I think, biomedical engineering. But these are the people that work with individuals that have had an amputation, and they help them by fitting them with the prosthetic device and teaching them how to walk with it, etc. Occupational therapists, they work with everyone from little kids in elementary schools and even preschool up through elder care and nursing homes. And they teach people that might have disabilities how to do day-to-day things after an injury, or little kids sometimes have a hard time with cursive when they start, and they have a hard time holding the pencil because maybe their grip isn't as strong, and then they will be referred to OT for help with that. Radiologist, that's the person that takes your x-ray when you go in, and that's their specialty. That's all they do. And there are probably, I could put 100 other octagons on here that have to do with health. These are just a smattering. Here's an example of where you may have a passion, but maybe you know in your heart that it is not something that you're you can make a lot of money at or you're worried about it. The best example I could think of is loving to write. And there are some people that legitimately want to go into creative writing. It's what they love. They would love to do it as a living. But that can be very difficult. It's very competitive to become a novelist. It can take years to be published. And that is something that you can also work on the side if you don't want to major in it for a career. But there are other things you can do with writing. One thing that I don't think students take enough look at is technical writing or grant writing. That is very specific writing, but for industry. I have a friend that works in the aerospace industry, and she takes all that really high level instructions from the engineers on how to work a piece of equipment. And she basically translates all their fancy science language into a package where managers at that plant where that equipment is going will be able to read it and figure out how to install the equipment. Grant writing is something that you find a lot in nonprofits that need to get a constant source of money to support them. They write specifically to get money for that nonprofit. Teaching, you can be an English teacher and teach other people how to write. Copywriters, they're the people that write every word that you see on a TV commercial or an ad that you see on a bulletin board. They write the words for anybody that runs a marketing campaign or has to sell something. Public relations and fundraising. These are the people that take other people out to dinner and get them acquainted with the wonderful work that a nonprofit is doing so that they can hopefully donate to that cause. An industrial psychologist, they don't work necessarily with individuals. They look at an industry, go into a manufacturing plant, see where they can increase efficiencies, look at how people are doing their jobs. If there are injuries, they'll look at how the people are doing their work, and then they'll write a report up of things that can be done differently so that people don't get injured as much on the job or can do things faster. And then, of course, a journalist for e-magazines or news, even if somebody doesn't become an actual anchor person on the local news, there are a bunch of people behind the scenes feeding them stories and doing the written work. What if you have to have a plan B? And I have seen students be heartbroken over this when they really don't need to see it as a traumatic event. Happiness is often related to how flexible we can be and how easily we can go to plan B. Many, many people have wound up wonderfully happy with plan B. Plan B was often the universe's plan A. We just didn't know it. And I've seen this a million times. I have begged students to change their major plan. I've thought, this is good. I could feel in my gut, this is going to be the best choice for you. I know you'll love it when you get into it. And then they go that way, they change direction, and they're incredibly happy. If you take the time to find your true north, which is your authentic self, plan B will be fantastic. This is one of my favorite quotes, and I think this is particularly poignant now with everything that's going on in the world. This is from Mr. Rogers. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." And I want you to really believe this. I am one of those helpers. I've been helping students on campus for 22 years. I have a whole team of people that are waiting for students to come to us and give them the help they need. And they're all over campus, but you just have to do the work to walk through the door or make a Zoom appointment. This is a diagram, and again, there could be many more octagons I could put on here, or pentagrams. Sorry, I'm getting my geometric shapes wrong. Career services, college alumni office, student counseling services, student groups. Examples at our university, the Black Student Union is a really, really well-known, well-connected group on campus. And I've seen some of our student parents that were engaged with them do networking, even post-graduation, to help the people that they worked with in the Black Student Union get a job. So they graduate, they get a job. Their friends graduate from that organization. They all know each other and they all network even post-college. Women in science. There's more and more help out there to get women into the STEM degrees. So of course, there's a lot of student groups that are focused on women in science. They're just students that are in that major. And that's a good place, even if you think you're in the right major and you're in the sciences, but you're struggling with a particular class, there's a great place to find tutors. Major exploration offices, sometimes they're part of career services and sometimes they're separate and specific to your particular department. And student parent programs in Minnesota has quite a few, and California has quite a few too. So you may not find one on every college campus, but you should check to make sure that you, whether you do have one or not. I thought for those that are undecided, it might be fun to explore some of the hot careers today. These are the fastest growing jobs for the decade, according to several different sources. Solar photovoltaic installer. That is a fancy word for the people that install the big solar panels on top of industries and residential units. And that is a huge growing career right now because of the industry or the interest in green economy. Wind turbine service technician, same thing. It's related to the green industries. And my guess is I didn't check, but I don't think either one of these require a 4-year degree. I think it's a workforce training technical degree program. Home health aides, these next two are very low paying and they're jobs that you can get without a degree. So this is not something recommended post-degree, but it does indicate that because of the aging baby boomer population, anything related to elder care is going to be huge in the next decade. Occupational therapy assistants, they work with OT-PTs, again, largely because of the aging baby boomer population. Information security analysts, we all know all the stuff on the news about the Facebook hacks and the, whose account has been breached this week. And those are the people that try to keep that from happening. Statistician, you'd have to be really good at math. These are people that just crunch numbers. They look at statistics to predict trends in buying so that sales forces will know what they should put on the market. Nurse practitioners, of course, we know nursing's been huge for many years. Speech pathology, they help people that may have speech disorders. Again, the reason that one is probably exploding right now is the aging baby boomer population. That becomes very prevalent, both with young children, but also with people that are stroke victims. This is from the 100 Best Jobs, US News and World Reports, marriage and family counselor. This requires a master's in marriage and family counseling. So you would major in psych undergrad and then have to do a 2-year master's. And then you can be a therapist specifically focusing on the whole family, not just individuals. Substance abuse and behavioral disorders counselor. This is a certification program, I believe. And it's interesting, many colleges now are offering this as a certification in addition to a degree. So sometimes that is a good choice to look at, is you're majoring in one thing, but can you fit in an extra certification with the same number of credits you would need to take an ordinary elective? And I know the U is one of the programs that has that. Data scientists, they analyze the data that the statisticians have handed them. So it's has to do with research and analysis. Mechanical engineer, they build machinery. Occupational therapy, this one blew me away, but it's a cartographer and map maker. And I would have thought with GPS that was a dying field, but they actually still need cartographers, the people that design and draw maps to feed the GPS systems. Genetic counselor, I found this fascinating. That requires a master's degree. You would work in a hospital environment, but you would do the counseling for people that have been told that maybe they have a genetic disorder in their line, in their planning on having children and they want to know what the chances of having that genetic disorder passed on, and they would meet with a genetic counselor. And then interpreting and translating, this is something that can be done sometimes with a 2-year degree. And you can get certification to interpret and translate for legal purposes or healthcare. Okay, these are just some careers that I threw up here. And you can just think in your head, how many of them have you ever heard of? And I wanted to point out a couple, especially since we have so many from California. HVAC technician. I see that in ads all the time, and I always wondered, what the heck is that? Well, it's heating, vacuum, ventilation, and air conditioning technician. This would be a manufacturing and training program, not a 4-year degree, but it's in huge demand. And I think it's going to be in more demand because we've all heard all the information about how ventilation may impact COVID spread. Environmental science, we're focusing a lot on green energy right now. So that I think is going to be something that will be a worthwhile occupation in the future. This was the most fascinating one because I've never heard of it. Airfield operations specialist. It's one of the top growing fields in California, according to Forbes, and it's growing, I think they said, by 295%. And this is the person that oversees the whole airport. They have to make sure there are EMTs and fire people on board. They have to probably make sure that the air traffic controller doesn't have anybody calling out sick that day. I imagine this person runs all over LAX. There's probably more at LAX, probably a team of 20 with a walkie-talkie talking to everybody, and it would be a high energy field. And that doesn't mean everybody go figure out how to major in this because it's growing by 294%. I think we chase too much the hot thing sometimes, but it's something to consider if you like that type of energy on a job to look into. Let's see, agriculture and food management. I am amazed at some of the majors that are in our ag school that I would never think of. There's a whole field of food management and food sales that are in the ag school that have nothing to do with ever being on a farm. And I think students don't look too much at that. We have a former student parent that works for Land O'Lakes, and he's the regional director for the entire Midwest now. Don't push the river. Life is easier when you find your flow. So you don't want to work against the current, but you also want to work and do the work you need to find your flow, to find what fits you. Okay, this is what I use when students come to me and they don't have any idea what they want to do, or they may have figured out that they're in a major that doesn't work for them. And we don't have time to do this interactively, but what I would suggest, this is going to be posted online with all our other materials. Please, if you are looking in this direction, take a look at these questions. Go through them all yourself, maybe even do them with a friend, do it interactively, ask, sit down with another friend that is maybe going to college and ask them those questions. Maybe do it with a parent or somebody that knows you really well. These seem like simple things to think about, but they do play in significantly to what you do on a day-to-day job and in a career. Here are some basics. I'm just going to kind of pick a couple. Can you envision yourself sitting inside at a desk all day? Do you need to work outside? Do you want to or need to be mobile? What is your ideal day-to-day work environment? Office, traveling around all the time, creative or aesthetically pleasing, inside or outside? If you are a person that needs to be moving all the time and you wind up in a career where you just sit at a desk all day, you're probably not going to be your happiest, truest self in that job. But here's something that I think is key to many, many decisions in life. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? People person or not? And it's okay to admit that you want a job where you don't have to have a ton of people interaction. Maybe you only want to work with animals or plants or gadgets. How well do you tolerate stress? Is prestige important to you? Do you want others to defer to you? That may mean you need to get multiple degrees or at least an additional degree, or work in an office setting that carries that prestige. Okay, so please take a look at this. Go, and I wouldn't just skip around on the questions like I have. Really look at this, maybe do a journaling activity where you write the answers if you don't have somebody else to bat them back and forth with. All right, we've reached the time for Q&A. Hopefully I did not talk too fast for everyone.
So if people have questions, they can enter them either in the chat or the Q&A section on, you can see it in the lower part of your screen. But I will start with one for Susan. Do you suggest I take courses again if I earn a low grade? And if so, how does that impact my financial aid?
Oh yeah, this could not be a better question. Thank you for asking that. The answer is, first of all, if you're repeating a number of classes in the same major, that's a big indication you should probably change. And yes, you are burning money on that, and you're burning financial aid because your time clock doesn't stop for those repeating classes. So there's a certain number of years that all different kinds of aid expires. I believe Pell Grant now is 6 years. So we have a Minnesota State grant here in Minnesota, and the time clock on that is 4 years. Many universities are front loading scholarships for freshmen and everything in the first 2 years as a recruiting tool to get, come to us. We're going to give you a lot of money for your first couple of years, but that money weans down when you get toward graduation. So you're paying for that class. In most cases at our university, I know you have to pay for that class, even if it's a repeat. So you're not only paying twice for the same class and burning financial aid on that, but you're also spending more time, right? So if you repeat a couple of classes, every term you do that, there are other new classes that you could have been taking in that place. So please look at how often you've done that. Also incompletes that aren't caused by like a significant incident in your life. If you're finding you've asked for many incompletes because you just couldn't keep your head above water in that class, that's probably an indication that you want to, and I'm not just saying like, because I say this, go and change your major today, but talk to somebody. Sometimes college professionals are hesitant to be direct and tell students what to do because they don't want to be blamed. But ask the question, if you were me, would you continue in this major considering how many times I've had to repeat the course?
Okay, thank you. Very thorough answer. And I do want to remind people that we will be sending out a link via email with the videotape and the PowerPoint that Susan put together so that you'll be able to see all of that. Another question that we have, what happens if I decide to change my major once I am admitted to my 4-year school? What's the process and any advice around that?
Yep, that usually is not a problem. You can, even people that start like at our university as freshmen, they can do inter-college transfers anytime they want. Usually there are certain times of year, if you're at a university that has multiple colleges, meaning a college of liberal arts, a science and technology college, typically there are 2 times a year when you can do a formal transfer from the college you're in to that college. But if that major that you're in is within the same college, say you're in liberal arts and you want to change from an English major to a psychology major, you can typically do that easily by just going to your advisor and doing a change of major form.
Okay.
Now, a caveat to that, you want to do that sooner rather than later because you don't want to put 3 years into one major struggling, and then you change majors the year before you graduate, you're going to add time on, because most majors take an entire 2 years of major requirements to graduate.
And are some campuses more family friendly than others, and how do you find them?
Yep. Okay. You are all asking the best questions. It's amazing. One of the things to look at is, do they have campus childcare? Now, campus childcare is very expensive and not every college can afford that. But that is an indicator right there that they may be on the more friendly side. So look on their website, search for childcare, search for student parent program, just in case there is a program there that you don't know about. Search for students with children, or as well as students' parents, and see what comes up. Visit the campus and see if you see any child-friendly play areas. That would be very uncommon. You don't want to pick an area school based on that, but sometimes they might have a playground. Family housing. Usually those are where any playground or anything might be, would be a family housing. So search for family housing on the website as well. They're mostly at four-year colleges. Trying to think what else. Sometimes you can tell just by asking what services are available for students with kids. One of the things we find is that student parents are hesitant or wait too long to let people know they're student parents. And sometimes it's because our students have told us they've had negative responses to that. And at four-year colleges, it is less likely there's a large population of students with children. Okay. But just acknowledging that you're a student parent and letting everyone you talk to know that, sometimes you can tell from their reaction, and it also allows them to then think of anything they might want to tell you about on their campus that is related to family supports.
Okay, and I think this is the last question we have time for. Can you explain a little bit more about what service learning is?
Yep. In most colleges, I think, at least at the U, you can actually, I think, search for the word service learning, and it will pull up all the classes that have a service learning component. And what this is they're listed with every other class, they're credit bearing, and they can be in any department. So you might be able to just scan a requirement that you have, for instance, like say you've got to take a social science class. You can look at sociology and one of the classes you're looking at and just scan the course description, because they typically are heavily identified that they require a service learning component. And it'll say you've got to do so many hours of volunteerism outside of the classroom. But I think in most cases, you're going to be able to search for them. And on our campus, there's even a service learning office. It tends to be folded in with internship office, or I'm blanking on the name, but in addition to study abroad, there is also a program where you can do studies at other universities within the United States and Canada. And so you're still part of the University of Minnesota, but I had a student go to Cal Poly for a term. So sometimes it's all connected with those types of offices, at least. Oh, engagement. Engagement is another keyword that it might come up under if you search for the term engagement.
Okay, thank you very much. Lori, you all set?
Yep. Susan, do you have the, there's the
Yep.
last slide, and we'll just have Brenda talk real quick. If you'll just introduce yourself, and then I'll close it out.
Hi, my name is Brenda. I'm a Raise the Bar student parent representative and an advisor for our scholars. I'm also a Raise the Bar scholar, and Raise the Bar has made such a huge impact on my educational journey, which is why I want to pay it forward. I transferred from Rio Hondo Community College and graduated from UCLA. And our next webinar, I will share the ins and outs of transferring successfully as a single parenting student. That's going to be this Friday, April 23rd at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Central time. And our following student parent webinars will be on financial aid, balance, and social capital, which will be on the following Mondays and the last Friday. Mondays at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Central time, Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Central time. And you can find more information with the exact dates on our website, raisethebar.org. And I hope to see you all there. My daughter had just left, but if you're watching, she kept coming in and she wanted to introduce herself. But if you come to the next webinar, you will definitely see her.
Thank you so much, Brenda. And thank you so much, Susan, for all of that information. I learned so much, and I sure wish that I had this information when I was transferring from community college to university as a student parent. But I hope our viewers enjoyed the PowerPoint, the presentation. We have a great team that have been working on these the webinar series, and so we hope you tune in again. And if you have any questions, as Brenda said, please visit our website. You can contact us at info@raisethebar.org. And we can also connect you with the other professionals and experts who have participated in the webinar. So until Friday, take care of yourself, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.